From Yanal Ashmuz's stunning victory in his UFC debut, to Sam Patterson trying to fight even after being knocked out, it's safe to say the fight had fans glued to the edges of their seats. But it seems like there's still a controversial take on this. Yep, I'm talking about Marc Goddard's late stoppage. For starters, the fight was pretty much a back-and-forth battle with both men trading blows for a major chunk of the night. But despite trying to dominate each other, it wasn't until the fifth fight that Yanal landed a huge right blow that sent Sam to the canvas. And when he was knocked out cold, the fight was over. This was a huge victory for Yanal, but that wasn't even the end of it. If anything, the knockout that ended the fight went on to start a whole new controversy. Sure, the knockout was a testament to the fighter's skill and ability to come out of a tough situation. But don't you think the referee, Marc Goddard, should have stepped in a bit earlier? Anyone who saw the fight would have come to the same conclusion. Sam hardly landed 2 strikes against his opponent, who fought back with 15 strikes of his own. And even though he was dropped very early on in the fight, the referee let the fight go on for a few more seconds. And here's where it got messy. Patterson couldn't even recover from the first few strikes, only to go on and face a bunch of unanswered strokes. Sure, Marc stepped in, eventually, but everything had changed by then. Sam seemingly suffered a severe concussion. It got so bad to the point that he wasn't even sure about his whereabouts anymore. If anything, his post-knockout reaction was just another fresh reminder of how dangerous MMA can be. The fight showcased the highs and lows of MMA. On the one hand, you've got a fighter with his surreal UFC debut. Meanwhile, his opponent's suffering a brutal knockout right in front of his fans. The same knockout that had the English-born fighter trying to grapple with Marc because he thought he was still fighting. Eventually, his coach had to step in to tell him the fight was over. Now, all of this boils down to one thing, and that's Marc letting the fight go on for a few more seconds. Here's what happened. The 26-year-old was trying a low kick to Yanal's leg, but that didn't turn out so well, because the Israeli fighter immediately caught that right before knocking his opponent to the ground with a brutal shot. And even if that wasn't enough, he went on to unleash more punches than I could count, which left Sam unconscious. I don't know what Marc was waiting for because he was out the moment the Israeli landed his very first strike. He really did need to take in a bunch of unnecessary punches. And I'm not the only one saying that. Even Yanal agreed that the fight should have been stopped sooner. Obviously, he knew the moment his opponent couldn't take it anymore. But let's just say it was his job to continue fighting no matter what, right until the referee calls the fight to an end. So you'd really have to blame Marc for this one. Even the Israeli fighter claimed that it wasn't his place to stop the fight. But the referees, who could clearly see that Sam couldn't take any more of this. I mean, just take a look at his reaction. It's absolutely horrifying. He obviously couldn't even tell what was going on around him, and his body just went into survival mode. Sure, he's still young. I mean, he just got signed in the UFC by Dana White, right after his Contender Series win back in 2022. So the 26-year-old's got a lot of time to get another chance to step into the octagon. But fans aren't ready to wait that long. In fact, they're criticizing the late stoppage on social media. I mean, after how brutal and easily avoidable the knockout was, it's pretty obvious that it was going to make its way to social media. And obviously, it didn't take long before it went viral. Many fans even claimed that it was genuinely hard to watch. One fan said, "Imagine how messed up you have to be for 3 of your senses to fail you like this." If you rewind and watch the fight again, you'll see he took a good 10 solid ground strikes right before going out. Others are counting up to 12. There were so many punches that even I don't know the exact amount. But that just goes to show how fast it all went down. And he woke up and tried to pull Marc by his collar, not even realizing that it's the fabric that he was holding on to. The weird part is, Mark hasn't given any official statements either. But we've seen fights like this, time and again, and they usually snap out of it pretty quickly. But this one seemed to go on for a very long time, which had fans super worried that something wasn't right there. Having said that, the fight was a game changer for their careers, especially since both Ashmouz and Patterson were making their UFC debuts. Although, if I'm being honest, the Brit was sort of the favorite one. But it only took a few seconds for the Israeli fighter to dominate his opponent and land a stunning victory. One that left his rival trying to grapple with the referee. Having said that, Yanal extended his undefeated MMA record to 7-0 at UFC 286. On top of that, the Israeli fighter also secured his 6th victory inside the distance. And since he wasn't the one brutally knocked out with a severe concussion, you'll probably see him return to the octagon sooner than you think, in probably around 3 months or so. On the other hand, I guess we gotta give Sam some time to take a step back before coming back to fight again. The Future lost for the 2nd time as a pro, and you know what that means. He's got a 10-2-1 record now, although I'm pretty sure they're already planning to have him back in the octagon as soon as possible. But only time will tell when that's happening. All I know for now is that we all had pretty high hopes for the fighter after what happened in 2022, back when he became the latest British MMA fighter to earn the UFC contract, all thanks to that amazing submission win. Yes, I'm talking about the time he defeated Vinicius Sensei with that rear naked choke in the 2nd round. It seems like that was all he needed to do to impress the boss. And let me tell you, it took him some time to soak it all in once he was on the UFC roster. I mean, that was a pretty big deal if you ask me. And it had fans and pretty much everyone in the UFC community asking him about the next big thing. Back then, he said he wasn't overly pleased with his performance. If anything, he was his biggest critic. And with all that pressure from the fight, he had a lot of things he wanted to work on. Because according to him, that still wasn't up to his standard. So even though he was pretty ecstatic that he got the contract, he felt this was his chance to show the world how good he really was. Simply put, he wanted everyone to know he earned it. But no one knew this knockout was going to be the next big thing waiting for him in the UFC. And that's why everyone thinks Mark Goddard should have stopped the fight.